Two pantheons, completely annihilated. The Greek gods, slaughtered. Asgard, buried under Ragnarok. And at the center of both apocalypses stands one man, Kratos, the Ghost of Sparta. But here's the question no one's asking. What do the other pantheons think about this? Because if you're Ra in Egypt, Amaterasu in Japan, or Quetzalcoatl among the Maya, you've just watched two entire divine hierarchies get torn apart by a single, very angry demigod. So do they see Kratos as a threat to be eliminated? A useful weapon to be controlled? Or something far more complicated? First, we need to establish something critical the pantheons know. This isn't speculation. God of War Ragnarok explicitly shows us that divine beings have intelligence networks that span realms and possibly pantheons. Remember the Norns? Those three beings who exist outside of fate itself, who can see all threads of destiny across all realms. They knew everything about Kratos. They knew about Greece. They knew about his past, his future, his every choice before he made it. And here's the kicker. They're not unique to Norse mythology in the God of War universe. In real-world mythology, nearly every major pantheon has beings that fulfill similar roles. The Egyptians had Thoth, the god of knowledge and wisdom, who recorded everything. The Maya had Zamna, associated with writing and knowledge. Japanese mythology has Omoikane, the deity of wisdom and intelligence. These aren't just libraries. These are divine intelligence agencies. So when Kratos climbed Mount Olympus and systematically murdered Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, Helios, Hermes, and literally drowned the world in chaos, you're telling me the Egyptian pantheon didn't notice? That Amaterasu didn't hear about the sun being extinguished in Greece? That the Mayan gods of death didn't feel the entire Greek underworld collapse? They knew. They had to know. And then, centuries later, it happens again. Asgard falls. The Aesir are decimated. Odin, the All-Father himself, is killed. Ragnarok, the event the Norse spent millennia trying to prevent, is triggered by the same man who destroyed Greece. From an outside perspective, Kratos isn't just dangerous. He's a pattern. He's a pantheon-ending event with a body count that would make most gods of war look like amateurs. Now look at Norse mythology. Kratos spent decades living quietly in Midgard. He wasn't hunting gods. He was raising his son, chopping wood, and trying to scatter his wife's ashes. It was Odin who sent Baldur after him. Odin who manipulated events. Odin who triggered the very Ragnarok he feared by refusing to leave Kratos alone. Again, the pantheon orchestrated its own downfall. So if you're the Ennead in Egypt or the Kamui in Japan, what's the actual lesson here? Don't provoke Kratos. As long as he's left alone, he's not a threat. The moment you try to control him, cage him, or kill him, you've signed your pantheon's death warrant. So let's put ourselves in the sandals, or whatever, of another pantheon's leadership. You're sitting in your divine council, and the news arrives. The Ghost of Sparta has killed his second All-Father. What's your move? The obvious answer seems to be, kill him first. Gather your strongest warriors, your most powerful magic users, and eliminate the threat before he reaches your shores. This is the Odin approach, and we know how that ended. But here's why this is actually a terrible strategy. Kratos doesn't lose. He's not unbeatable in the traditional sense. He's been wounded, captured, even killed. But he doesn't stay dead, and he doesn't stop. Every pantheon that's tried to eliminate him has ended up extinct. That's not hyperbole. That's a 100% failure rate. Moreover, attacking Kratos requires answering a crucial question. Why did he destroy those pantheons? And this is where the intelligence matters. Because any pantheon worth their divine salt would investigate the circumstances. Greece wasn't random. Kratos didn't wake up one day and decide to commit deicide to fun. Ours manipulated him into killing his family. Zeus betrayed and murdered him. The gods of Olympus were actively trying to kill Kratos to prevent a prophecy that they caused by trying to prevent it. Classic Greek tragedy. From an outside perspective, the Greek pantheon destroyed itself through hubris, betrayal, and tyranny. Kratos was the instrument, but Zeus loaded the gun. But what if you're thinking bigger? What if, Instead of fearing Kratos, you try to use him. Imagine you're Set, the Egyptian god of chaos and disorder. You've been trying to overthrow Ra for millennia. You've fought Horus to a standstill. You need a trump card. And then you hear about this god butcher who's already taken down 2 Allfathers. The temptation must be incredible. Point Kratos at your enemies, let him do what he does best, and reap the benefits. Except we've seen this play out multiple times. Ares tried to use Kratos as a weapon. Kratos killed him. The gods of Olympus tried to control him, extinct. Odin tried to manipulate circumstances around him, Ragnarok. Even Freya, who had relatively good intentions, nearly died when she tried to force Kratos into a conflict he didn't want. Kratos isn't a weapon. He's a force of nature. You don't control a hurricane, you get out of its way. And here's the thing. By God of War Ragnarok, Kratos has fundamentally changed. He's no longer the rage-driven monster who tore through Olympus. He's calculating, patient. He sees through manipulation. When Odin, disguised as Tyr, tries to manipulate him, Kratos is skeptical from the start. When Thor shows up for a fight, Kratos tries to de-escalate. Any pantheon doing their intelligence homework would notice this evolution. The Kratos of God of War 3 might have been controllable through rage. The Kratos of Ragnarok, he's seen every trick in the book, and he's written a few of his own. So the weapon scenario becomes a massive gamble. You might succeed in pointing Kratos at your enemies, but what happens after? What happens when he realizes he's been manipulated? What happens when your enemies are gone and he decides you're next? The risk-reward calculation doesn't add up. So if attacking is suicide and manipulation is a trap, what's left? I'd argue the smartest play is actually the most boring, strategic isolation. Think about it like this. Kratos has spent decades in the Norse realms. In all that time, he never tried to leave. He never attempted to reach Egypt, Japan, Mesoamerica, or any other divine territory. He had access to the world tree, Yggdrasil, which theoretically connects to other pantheons, but he didn't use it for conquest. Why? Because Kratos doesn't want to fight gods anymore. He wants to be left alone. So the intelligent move for other pantheons is to let him. Establish clear boundaries. Make it known through whatever diplomatic channels exist between pantheons that if Kratos enters their territory peacefully, he'll be received peacefully. Don't send scouts. Don't send warriors. Don't send manipulators. Just watch from a distance. This is where those intelligence networks become crucial. The Egyptians could have Thoth monitoring the situation. The Japanese could have Omoikani keeping watch. The Maya could have their own seers tracking his movements, not to prepare an attack, but to ensure he's not being provoked. Because here's the key insight. Kratos is only dangerous to pantheons that threaten him or his family. If your gods aren't doing either of those things, you're safe. There's even a fascinating possibility here. What if pantheons establish an unofficial treaty? An understanding that spans divine territories. The Ghost of Sparta is not to be engaged. Any god who provokes him does so without the backing of their pantheon. It sounds cowardly, but it's actually brilliant strategic thinking. You're not submitting to Kratos, you're acknowledging reality. 2 pantheons gambled on confronting him, and 2 pantheons lost. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. And there's one more element to consider: Atreus. Kratos' son has connections to multiple pantheons now. He's been to Jotunheim. He's interacted with the Aesir and Vanir. He's shown interest in exploring other realms. Atreus could become a bridge, a way for pantheons to communicate with Kratos without being threatening. A young, curious god who wants to learn and explore is a much better point of contact than sending warriors. And Kratos has shown repeatedly that he'll listen to Atreus when he won't listen to anyone else. But let's go deeper, because there's a question underneath all of this that we need to address. What does Kratos represent to other pantheons? In God of War's universe, gods are supposed to be eternal. They're supposed to be above mortal concerns, unkillable, permanent fixtures of reality. The natural order places them at the top. Kratos shattered that assumption twice. He proved that gods can be held accountable. That divine power doesn't grant immunity from consequences. That immortality doesn't mean invincibility. From a certain perspective, Kratos is the most dangerous idea in the God of War universe, the idea that gods can end. So here's where it gets really interesting. To tyrannical gods, ones who rule through fear, manipulation, or oppression, Kratos is an existential threat. He's proof that their power isn't absolute. But to gods who rule justly, to pantheons that actually care for their worshippers and maintain balance, Kratos might be irrelevant, or even reassuring. Think about it. If your pantheon isn't built on corruption and tyranny, you don't have to fear the god butcher. He's only killed gods who, frankly, deserved it. Zeus was a tyrant. Odin was manipulative paranoid, willing to sacrifice everything for control. In fact, Kratos' existence might actually improve divine behavior. If you're a god who's been considering betraying your worshippers, enslaving mortals, or consolidating power through cruelty, well, there's now a precedent for what happens to gods like that. Kratos is a walking deterrent. A reminder that divine power comes with divine responsibility, and failure to uphold that responsibility can have permanent consequences. This is why the end of Ragnarok is so significant. Kratos doesn't take Odin's place. He doesn't become the new All-Father. He lets the realms figure out their own future. He breaks the cycle of divine tyranny by refusing to perpetuate it. Other pantheons watching this would see something unprecedented, a god-killer who doesn't want to be a god, a warrior powerful enough to rule who chooses not to. That's a fundamentally new paradigm in divine politics. So, bringing this all together, would other pantheons fear Kratos? The answer is, it depends on what kind of gods they are. Tyrannical, manipulative pantheons absolutely should fear him. He's a proven threat to that style of divine rule. The smart ones would avoid him. The arrogant ones would try to eliminate or control him and would likely share the fate of Greece and Asgard. But just balanced pantheons? They might view him with caution, sure, but not fear. They'd recognize him for what he is, a father trying to build a better life for his son, who happens to be the most dangerous being in existence if you threaten that life. And here's my theory for where God of War might go next. I think we will see other pantheons. Egypt seems like the obvious choice given the teasers. But I don't think we'll see another Kratos destroys a pantheon story. I think we'll see Kratos navigating a world where his reputation precedes him, where gods are cautious, where politics replace outright warfare, where the real challenge isn't physical, it's philosophical. How does the god butcher exist in a world that now knows what he's capable of? How does he prove he's changed when everyone expects the monster? That's a story worth telling. The Ghost of Sparta has fundamentally changed the divine landscape. 2 pantheons fell, and the rest of the god world is taking notes. Whether they see him as threat, weapon, or warning, one thing is certain, they're watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into God of War's lore and the politics of pantheons, make sure you're subscribed to Myth Mode. We've got more theories, breakdowns, and mythology content coming your way. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss it. What pantheon do you think Kratos should explore next? What gods do you think would actually try to fight him versus the smart ones who'd leave him alone? Let me know in the comments. This has been Myth Mode. I'll see you in the next video.